Okay, so today's lesson is going to be on Time Enough at Last. This is a story written in the 1950s by Lynn Venable, and it was turned into a Twilight Zone, which was a TV show from the 1960s. It's really, really good. We're going to watch the Twilight Zone that goes with this tomorrow. There are a lot of differences, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, because they're always changing the actual text whenever they're making it into a movie or a show. Okay, so here we go. For a long time, Henry Bemis had had an ambition to read a book, not just the title or the preface or a page somewhere in the middle. He wanted to read the whole thing, all the way through from beginning to end. A simple ambition, perhaps, but in the cluttered life of Henry Bemis, an impossibility. Henry had no time of his own. There was his wife, Agnes, who owned that part of it that his employer, Mr. Carsville, did not buy. Henry was allowed enough to get to and from work, that in itself being quite a concession on Agnes's part. So what they're saying there is that his wife is really, really controlling, and she only gives him a few minutes to get to work and a few minutes back. He has no free time. Also, nature had conspired against Henry by handing him um, by by handing him with a pair of hopelessly myopic eyes. Poor Henry literally could not see his hand in front of his face. For a while, when he was very young, his parents had thought he had an intellectual disability. When they realized it was his eyes, they got glasses for him. He was never quite able to catch up. There was never enough time. It looked as though Henry's ambition would never be realized. Then something happened which changed all that. So I want you to imagine for a moment that your passion in life, whatever that is, you're not able to ever take part in that passion. So because everybody's telling you how to spend your time and what to do. So he's never finished a book before. That's his ambition. He wants to read an entire book, and that's never happened. Okay. And Henry was down in the vault of the East Side Bank and Trust when it happened. He had stolen a few moments from the duties of his bank teller's cage to try to read a few pages of the magazine he had bought that morning. He'd made an excuse to Mr. Carsville about needing bills in large denominations for a certain customer, and then, safe inside the dim recesses of the vault, he had pulled from inside his coat the pocket-sized magazine. He had just started a picture article cheerfully entitled, "The New Weapons and What They'll Do to You," when all the noise in the world crashed in upon his eardrums. It seemed to be inside of him and outside of him all at once. Then the concrete floor was rising up at him, and the ceiling came slanting down toward him. And for a fleeting second, Henry thought of a story he had started to read once called "The Pit and the Pendulum." He regretted in that insane moment that he had never had time to finish that story to see how it came out. Then all was darkness and quiet and unconsciousness. When Henry came to, he knew that something was desperately wrong with the Eastside Bank and Trust. The heavy steel door on the vault was buckled and twisted, and the floor tilted up at a dizzying angle. While the arms and legs, dizzying angle, sorry. While the ceiling dipped crazily toward it, Henry gingerly got to his feet, moving his arms and legs experimentally. Assured that nothing was broken, he tenderly raised a hand to his eyes. His precious glasses were intact, thank God. He would never have been able to find his way out of the shattered vault without them. So I would like in the comment or in the chat, can someone tell me what happened, please? Because this is not said, you have to infer. Lydia, what happened while Henry was in the vault of the bank that he worked at?
So this is kind of just like a guess for me, kind of,
Of
but
course.
I kind of feel like maybe he was like trying to read in the vault and stuff like that, and then maybe I kind of feel like somebody might have tried to break into the vault because, like he said, the door, like the vault, like handle and door is kind of all weird and messed up, and everything was gone crazy. So I think some people tried to use explosives to get into the vault.
That is a very, very good guess. You were absolutely right. He was trying to sneak some time down in the vault to read. It's bigger than that, though. Okay, so it's a great guess. You're on the right path. Does anyone else want to try? And thank you for sharing. Aiden?
Because it's Twilight Zone, I'm guessing it's something. Oh wait, isn't Twilight Zone the show that has like all the weird like you go through a door and you're on the other side?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, there's probably like either like the banks just a twisted kind of maze or something like that.
Okay, it's a great guess. Thank you for sharing. I'm gonna have one more and then I'm gonna tell you guys if you don't have it. Declan.
Mine is actually a question. Isn't that ride in Disneyland not the
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy one? But before it was Guardians of the Galaxy, wasn't it like Twilight Zone?
Yes, and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. But they don't have that anymore. But yes, that was there. Okay, so a bomb went off, you guys. Now, in the 1960s and the 1950s in the United States, lots and lots of movies and TV shows were about nuclear weapons, okay? Because people were scared of them at that time. And anytime a society is going through something, there are always movies and books and things like that written about what's going on because it plays on people's fears. So a nuclear bomb went off, and Henry was inside of a bank's vault, which means, of course, that he was safe and other people were not. Okay. All right. So we're at. Now remember, he literally cannot see his hand in front of his face. So he was very happy that his glasses had not, come off and broken. He made a mental note to write Dr. Torrance to have a step repair made and mailed to him. Blasted nuisance not having his prescription on file locally. But Henry trusted no one but Dr. Torrance to grind those thick lenses into his own complicated prescription. Henry removed the heavy. Jackson, can you not raise your hand that many times? It's really distracting me because I've got like 10 things popping up and I can't read when that happens. It's okay to raise your hand, guys, but when you raise it, Jackson, you're still raising over and over again. I think that's like 20. I'm so sorry, you guys. Hold on. Jackson, can you unmute? Okay. I apologize, guys. Henry removed the heavy glasses from his face. Instantly, the room dissolved into a neutral blur. Henry saw a pink splash that he knew was his hand, and a white blob carefully dusted the lenses. As he replaced the glasses, he slipped down on the bridge of his nose. He had been meaning to have them tightened for some time. Henry suddenly realized, without the realization actually entering his conscious thoughts, that something momentous had happened. Something worse than the boiler blowing up. Something worse than a gas main exploding. Something worse than anything that had ever happened before. He felt that way because it was so quiet. There was no whine of sirens, no shouting, no running, just an ominous and all-pervading silence. Henry walked across the slanting floor, slipping and stumbling onto the uneven surface. He made his way to the elevator. The car lay crumpled at the foot of the shaft like a discarded accordion. There was something inside of it that Henry could not look at, something that had once been a person, or perhaps several people. It was impossible to tell now. Feeling sick, Henry staggered toward the stairway. The steps were still there, but so jumbled and piled back upon one another that it was more like climbing the side of a mountain than mounting a stairway. It was quiet in the huge chamber that had been the lobby of the bank. It looked strangely cheerful with the sunlight shining through the girders where the ceiling had fallen. The dappled sunlight glinted across the silent lobby, and everywhere there were huddled lumps of unpleasantness that made Henry sick as he tried not to look at them. "Mr. Carsville?" he called. It was very quiet. Something had to be done, of course. This was terrible right in the middle of a Monday, too. Mr. Carsville would know what to do. He called again, more loudly, and his voice cracked hoarsely. Mr. Carsville! And then he saw an arm and shoulder extending out from under a huge fallen block of marble ceiling. In the buttonhole was the white carnation Mr. Carsville had worn to work that morning, and on the third finger of that hand was a massive signet ring also belonging to Mr. Carsville. Numbly, Henry realized that the rest of Mr. Carsville was under the block of marble. Henry felt a pang of real sorrow. Mr. Carsville was gone, and so was the rest of the staff, Mr. Wilkinson and Mr. Emery and Mr. Pritchard, and the same with Pete and Ralph and Jenkins and Hunter and Pat and the guard and Willie the doorman. There was no one to say what was to be done about the Eastside Bank and Trust except Henry Bemis. And Henry wasn't worried about the bank. There was something he wanted to do. He climbed carefully over piles of fallen masonry. Once he stepped down onto something that crunched and squashed beneath his feet, and he set his teeth on edge to keep from retching. The street was not much different from the inside. Bright sunlight, so much concrete to crawl over. But the unpleasantness was much, much worse. Everywhere there were strange, motionless lumps that Henry could not look at. Suddenly he remembered Agnes. He should be trying to get to Agnes, shouldn't he? He remembered a poster he had seen that said, "In event of emergency, do not use the telephone. Your loved ones are as safe as you." He wondered about Agnes. He looked at the smashed automobiles, some with their four wheels pointing skyward, like the stiffened legs of dead animals. He could not get to Agnes now anyway, if she was safe, and then she was safe otherwise. Of course, Henry knew Agnes wasn't safe. He had a feeling that there wasn't anyone safe for a long, long way. Maybe not in the whole state, or the whole country, or the whole world. No, that was a thought Henry did not want to think. He forced it from his mind and turned his thoughts back to Agnes. So occasionally kids get confused at this point. He is actually having a flashback, which is one of our lit terms. So he's having this is a memory. This is back in time. This is things were normal. Okay. If anybody has a comment right now or a question, put it in the chat. If you don't know what's going on. Esau, you good? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on. Whoops, she had been a pretty good wife now that it was all said and done. It wasn't exactly her fault that people didn't have time to read nowadays. It was just that there was the house and the bank and the yard. There were the Joneses for bridge and the Graysons for canasta and charades with the Bryants. And the television Agnes loved to watch, but would never watch alone. He never had time to read even a newspaper. He started thinking about last night, that business about the newspaper. Henry had settled into his chair, quietly afraid that a creaking spring might call to Agnes's attention the fact that he was momentarily unoccupied. He had folded the newspaper slowly and carefully. The sharp crackle of the paper would have been a clarion call to Agnes. He had glanced at the headlines on the first page, "Collapse of Conference Imminent." He didn't have time to read the article. He turned to the second page, "Sullen predicts war only days away." He flipped through the pages faster, reading brief snatches here and there, afraid to spend too much time on any one item. On the back page was a brief article entitled "Prehistoric Artifacts Unearthed in Yucatan." Henry smiled to himself and carefully folded the sheet of paper into fourths. That would be interesting. He would read all of it. Then it came. Agnes's voice. "Henry!" And then she was upon him. She lightly flicked the paper out of his hands and into the fireplace. He saw the flames lick up and curl possessively around the unread article. Agnes continued, "Henry, tonight is the Joneses' bridge night. They'll be here in 30 minutes, and I'm not dressed yet, and here you are, reading." She had emphasized the last word as though it were an unclean act. "Hurry and shave. You know how smooth Jasper Jones's chin always looks, and then straighten up this room." She glanced regretfully toward the fireplace. "Oh dear, that paper! The television schedule." Oh, well, after the Joneses leave, there won't be time for anything but the late, late movie. And don't just sit there, Henry. Hurry! Henry was hurrying now, but hurrying too much. He cut his leg on a twisted piece of metal that had once been an automobile fender. He thought about things like lockjaw and gangrene, and his hand trembled as he tied his pocket handkerchief around the wound. In his mind, he saw the fire again licking across the face of last night's newspaper. He thought that now he would have time to read all the newspapers he wanted to, only now there wouldn't be any more. That heap of rubble across the street had been the Gazette building. It was terrible to think there would never be another up to date newspaper. Agnes would have been very upset. No television schedule. But then, of course, no television. He wanted to laugh, but he didn't. That would not have been fitting. Not at all. He could see the building he was looking for now, but the silhouette was strangely changed. The great circular dome was now a ragged semicircle, half of it gone, and one of the great wings of the building had fallen in upon itself. A sudden panic gripped Henry Bemis. What if they were all ruined, destroyed, every one of them? What if there wasn't a single one left? Tears of helplessness welled in his eyes as he painfully fought his way over and through the twisted fragments of the city. So if you've already read this, don't answer, please. But if you have a guess as to what he is actually looking for, please put your hand in the chat. What is he going to go do right now? Seth.
He might be looking for newspapers.
You are so close, Seth. You are so ridiculously close. It's you're on the right track. So what do you think he's looking for? Let's see, Lydia.
Some books, or one of his books, or his magazine.
Yes. What is it though? What building?
The library.
Correct. Okay, that's exactly where he's off to look for the library. All right, good. So we'll keep going. It's not too much left. He thought of the building when it had been whole. He remembered the many nights he had paused outside its wide and welcoming doors. He thought of the warm nights when the doors had been thrown open and he could see the people inside, see them sitting at the plain wooden tables with the stacks of books beside them. He used to think then what a wonderful thing a public library was, a place where anybody at all could go in and read. He had been tempted to enter many times. He had watched the people through the open doors, the men in greasy work clothes who sat near the door night after night, laboriously studying a technical journal perhaps, difficult for him but promising a brighter future. There had been an aged, scholarly man who sat on the other side of the door, leisurely paging, moving his lips a little as he did so, a man having little time left, but rich in time because he could do with it as he chose. Henry had never gone in. He had started up the steps once, got almost to the door, but then he remembered Agnes, her questions and shouting, and he turned away. He was going in now, though, almost crawling, his breath coming in stabbing gasps, his hands torn and bleeding, his trouser leg was sticky red where the wound in his leg had soaked through the handkerchief. It was throbbing badly, but Henry didn't care. He had reached his destination. Part of the inscription was still there over the now doorless entrance. And it used to say public library, but that's the only part that's left. The rest had been torn away. The place was in shambles. The shelves were overturned, broken, smashed, tilted, their precious contents spilled in disorder upon the floor. A lot of the books, Henry noted gleefully, were still intact, still whole, still readable. He was literally knee-deep in them. He wallowed in books. He picked one up. The title was Collected Works of William Shakespeare. Yes, he must read that sometime. He laid it aside carefully. He picked up another, Spinoza. He tossed it away, seized another and still another. Which to read first? There were so many. He had been conducting himself a little like a starving man in a deli, grabbing a little of this and a little of that in a frenzy of enjoyment. But now he studied away. From the pile about him, he selected one volume, sat comfortably down on an overturned shelf, and opened the book. Henry Bemis smiled. There was the rumble of complaining stone, minute in comparison, which the epic complaints followed the fall of the bomb. This one occurred under one corner of the shelf upon which Henry sat. The shelf moved, threw him off balance. The glasses slipped from his nose and fell with a tinkle. He bent down, clawing blindly, and found them finally, their smashed remains. A minor, indirect destruction stemming from the sudden, wholesale smashing of a city, but the only one that greatly interested Henry Bemis. He stared down at the blurred page before him. He began to cry. The end. Welcome to the Twilight Zone. So please, I'm going to have you guys go into your into breakout groups for a little bit, and I would like you to discuss what happened. What was that ending, and how do you feel about it? Those of you who love to read are feeling something right now. So you're going to go into breakout rooms for just 2 minutes. It's going to be quick, but that way you guys can really discuss it. So how do you feel about it? And what was that ending? What happened? So let me go ahead and I have to stop sharing. And then I'll take questions, I promise. We will talk about this. But for now, I want you guys to talk about it by yourself first. There we go. Okay, 2 minutes, guys. The person with Disney on gets to go first. And if you all have Disney on, then the person with the most Disney gets to go first. Now, I'm going to tack on 30 seconds to that. So you have 2 minutes, 30 seconds, then I'm pulling you guys back. All right, here we go. Okay, so I am really interested to hear what you guys have to say. So put your hand in the chat, please, if you would like to just share your thoughts about the story, or if you didn't understand something. So, or what was that ending about? Let's see. I know some of you guys missed it. During live lessons, I cannot let you in the middle because it's really distracting. So if you guys come late or something like that, I cannot let you in. So if your hand is in the chat to tell me that you missed something, you can just take that away. This will be on YouTube tonight, and you guys can look at it again if you need to. All right, so let's see. Who haven't I heard from? Andrew, can you unmute, please, and let me know what you thought about this, or if you want to talk about the ending.
Yeah. So I presume because I looked at the article again, and I saw that it said that his glasses slipped from his nose and fell with a tinkle. And then, well, I thought that because he loved to read so much, you could tell that his glasses broke. He cried because he loved to read, and now he can't read anymore.
Right. And notice how there was a lot of foreshadowing in the beginning, talking about how he cannot see well without his glasses. He can't see his hand. So we really know the significance of this, that he will never be able to read again.
Yeah.
And then I was going to ask you what happened. Do you know what happened? They don't explain it well, but do you know what actually happened that caused his glasses to fall?
Well, I think it might have been the after effect of the bomb. Like, you know how sometimes there's still some things that move even after a big earthquake. Well, the shelf moved, and I assume he was bouncing on it, and so
yeah. That's exactly it. He was sitting on the shelf, and then he had it rumbled. And remember, the foreshadowing was that the glasses kept sliding down his face, and he kept meaning to get them tightened. And those of you who are glasses wearers, that actually does happen. I need mine tightened right now. So thank you. All right. Those of you who are book lovers, I would like to know how you feel about this ending too. Let's see, Luke, what do you think?
I think like this whole passage, like his life is like controlled by his wife, and also like when like the part when like his wife was like the Jones are coming over soon, when like she acted like in the thing that happened yesterday didn't, like it was like a dream or something, like nothing happened, when like the city's completely destroyed, barely anyone survived.
Okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up. That time was in the past. So when she was angry about the him reading the newspaper, that was the night before. So she didn't actually live. Nobody did. It's implied. So you have to infer that he's probably the only person that made it, and he doesn't even know about the world. You'll never know. It's just a short story. But so that happened in the past, and he was just thinking about it. But imagine being treated like that by anybody, that just so disrespectfully, like every second of your day is taken. And when you try to do something you love, it's thrown into the fire. I mean, that's rough. So he had it rough the whole time. But what is that called? So what is the end of the story called? When we thought he was finally going to have time enough at last to read, his glasses fell and broke. That's a strategy that's used in many Twilight Zones.
Irony, right?
Yes, that's irony. Good, exactly. And you're going to see that I think every Twilight Zone has irony. It's not always quite so big, but okay. So just in the chat, I'm going to go ahead. If you guys can thumbs up or thumbs down the story. Did you like it? Did you not like? No. I don't mean did you like the ending as though did you love that Henry Bemis had his broke his glasses and couldn't read. I just mean, was it a good story? Did you like it? Were you engaged? So thumbs up, thumbs down. I just need to get a quick read on this because you guys are my advanced class, and so I'm trying to get stories that are not part of that reader. You know that reader that was sent home, the one that has like all the it's like a workbook. Yes, no. Okay, well, it looks like most of you guys like it. Those are really, some of them stories are pretty basic in there. I don't like using that book all the time with my advanced class. I'm trying to find other stories to read with you guys that are a higher level. Okay, let's see. Okay, good. All right, so tomorrow we're going to watch Twilight Zone. They are all on Netflix, and I know a lot of kids like to watch them ahead of time, but it's so much more fun if we watch it as a class. And then, but I mean, I'm just saying that they're there because you're going to find out anyway. They're all on Netflix, but it is really fun to watch something as an entire class and kind of see it. It's very different. I'd say it's maybe 25% of the story, and then they changed a lot. So we'll have to discuss too what we like better, and there'll be some questions to answer tomorrow. And that is it for now. So we're going to take our break. I'm going to give you guys, we'll meet back at exactly 10. So you guys have a few minutes to go ahead and go to the bathroom, eat something, stretch out, do what you need to do. I'll put the timer on, and that is that. Okay, thanks guys. We'll be back at exactly 10, please.
I have a question.
I'm going to wait 1 second because I'm still recording. So give me 1 second so I can stop recording, and then I'll be right back for you.